Some children do not remember a time when they were allowed to be a child. They remember being useful, being quiet, being the one who noticed first, being the one who could tell, from the sound of a door closing or the heaviness in a parent's footsteps, what kind of night it was going to be. They remember learning the weather of other people before they learn the seasons of their own body. And even now, long after the rooms have changed, the pattern can still live inside them. A reflex that says, stay ahead, stay needed, stay composed. Do not ask for too much because wanting is risky. Growing up too fast rarely announces itself like a single dramatic moment. Most of the time it is subtle. It is a slow rearranging of roles. A child who becomes the translator, not just for language, but for emotions. A child who becomes the peacemaker, the little adult, the one who learns to read faces the way other kids learn to read storybooks, the one who can soothe a sibling, calm a parent, clean a kitchen, manage a mood, anticipate a problem, solve it before it becomes visible. A child who is praised for being mature, when what they really are is vigilant. If you have known this life, you may recognize the early signs in yourself. The way you could sit still for long periods, not because you were peaceful, but because you were trying not to take up space. The way you held your breath when adults argued, as if your lungs were responsible for keeping the room intact. The way you learned to do things perfectly, not out of passion, but out of prevention. If I do it right, no one gets upset. If I do it right, they will not leave. If I do it right, maybe I will be safe. Adults often look back and say, I was just responsible. I was just helpful. But responsibility in a child is supposed to come and go. It is supposed to be taught gently, then released like training wheels. When a child has to grow up too fast, responsibility becomes a permanent posture. It becomes a nervous system strategy. A child's brain's built to attach, to reach for someone bigger, steadier, and say, hold this with me. But when the bigger person cannot hold it, or does not notice they are not holding it, the child does something astonishing. The child adapts, the child becomes the holder. This is not a moral choice, this is biology meeting circumstance. In attachment theory, there is a term for when a child's caregiving system turns on too early: parentification. In real life, it often looks like this. A child who knows what the electricity bill costs, a child who checks if there is food for tomorrow, a child who comforts a crying adult and tells them it will be okay, while their own small chest tightens with fear they cannot name. A child who believes love is something you earn by managing other people's feelings. Sometimes it comes from chaos, a household where moods swing without warning. Sometimes it comes from quiet absence, a parent who is physically present but emotionally far away, a caregiver who is overwhelmed, depressed, sick, grieving, working too much, surviving. Sometimes it comes from a family that looks fine on the outside, but where the child has learned that emotions are inconvenient, needs are embarrassing, and the safest thing you can be is low maintenance. There does not have to be cruelty for this to happen. Harm can come from inconsistency, from the way attention arrives and disappears like a faulty light bulb, from the way a child learns, I cannot count on comfort, from the way praise is given for not needing, from the way tenderness is offered only when the child is performing well, behaving well, doing well, holding it together. Children who grow up too fast become experts at watching. You can see it in the way they enter a room. They scan before they settle, they notice tone changes, they keep track of who is tense, who is quiet, who is at risk of exploding, who is about to cry. Their eyes learn the micro expressions that most people miss. Their body learns to be ready. And because this happens early, it feels like personality. People may call them mature, wise, old soul. They may even feel proud of it. But underneath, it is often a nervous system that never got the memo that it is allowed to rest. Neuroscience would talk about stress responses: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. But in lived experience, it can be simpler. It can feel like being on call, like even during good moments, there is a part of you listening for the shift. It can feel like you cannot fully enjoy anything because enjoyment makes you vulnerable. It can feel like relaxing is irresponsible. Like if you stop scanning, something bad will happen and it will be your fault for not preventing it. Many children who grow up too fast learn to disappear in plain sight. They do not cause trouble. They do not need much. They do not ask. And because they do not ask, adults sometimes miss them. A child who is loud is easier to notice. A child who is struggling outwardly gets attention. But the child who quietly becomes capable can be overlooked. Not because they are not loved, but because their adaptation is misread as strength. This is one of the most unsettling parts. The very thing that kept you functioning may have also hidden your pain. You may have learned to smile while carrying something heavy. You may have been the kid everyone relied on, and then later, the adult everyone relies on. You may have been praised for not being difficult, and nobody realized the cost. The cost shows up later, often in ways that are hard to connect back to childhood. It can show up as perfectionism. Not the kind that is about excellence, but the kind that is about safety. The kind that says, if I make no mistakes, I will not be punished, humiliated, abandoned, blamed. The kind that tightens your stomach when you send a text and immediately wonder if it sounded wrong. The kind that turns rest into guilt and guilt into productivity. It can show up as hyper-independence, a fierce refusal to need anyone. Not because you do not want connection, but because needing has always felt like a gamble you cannot afford. You might say, I am fine, even when your chest aches. You might solve your problems alone, pay your own way, carry your own weight, and secretly resent how heavy it is, while also feeling ashamed that you resent it. It can show up as people-pleasing, a quickness to sense what others want and become it. A readiness to smooth tension, to apologize first, to anticipate conflict and prevent it. You might feel responsible for the emotional temperature of every room. You might catch yourself managing someone else's disappointment as if it is a crisis. You might feel restless when someone is upset, not because their feelings are wrong, but because your body learned long ago that someone else's emotions can become your job. It can also show up in the opposite direction. Emotional withdrawal, a calm that is not calm but numbness. A habit of disconnecting when feelings get too intense. A quiet internal rule that says, do not rely on anyone, do not reveal too much, do not give them a handle. You might be good in emergencies and distant in intimacy. You might feel like a caretaker in relationships, but struggle when someone wants to care for you. You might freeze when someone asks, what do you need? Because that question was not safe to answer when you were young. And then there is the fear of being too much. That one can be so quiet it feels like air. It can show up as editing yourself mid-sentence, holding back tears even when you are alone, laughing to soften what you are saying, making your pain palatable, trying to be understandable, easy, reasonable. You may have learned that feelings are burdens, that asking for comfort is selfish, that needing reassurance is childish. So you become impressive instead. You become composed. You become the person who handles it. And inside, a younger part of you keeps waiting for someone to notice without being told. Children who grow up too fast often become adults who are very good at functioning and not very good at receiving. They can give empathy, but struggle to accept it. They can hold space for others, but feel uncomfortable when someone holds space for them. They can survive, but have trouble letting themselves be cared for without earning it. It is important to say this carefully. None of these patterns are character flaws. They are intelligent responses to the environment that shaped you. They are survival strategies that worked. They helped you stay connected to the people you needed, even when those people could not show up consistently. They helped you create predictability where there was none. They helped you control what could be controlled. They helped you keep the peace. They helped you keep going. But survival strategies have a strange problem. They do not automatically turn off when the danger ends. The nervous system is not interested in whether something is over. It is interested in whether something feels familiar. And familiarity can be confusing when your early life taught you that love is unpredictable and safety is conditional. You can be in a stable room and still feel the old vigilance. You can be with someone kind and still brace for the shift. You can be praised and still hear the quiet expectation behind it. Sometimes as an adult, you may look at your life and wonder why certain things feel so hard. Why rest feels like falling. Why asking for help feels like weakness. Why you can be capable and still feel fragile. Why you can be surrounded by people and still feel alone in the places that matter. Often it is because you were trained early to meet life with a particular stance. Hold it together, handle it, do not break. There is also grief here, not always loud grief. Sometimes it is a subtle mourning that comes in small moments. Watching children play and feeling something tighten in your throat. Hearing someone describe their childhood as carefree and feeling oddly blank. Being in a safe relationship and realizing how unfamiliar safety feels. Not because you do not want it, but because your body does not have a map for it. If you grew up too fast, you might have trouble knowing where you end and other people begin. You might have learned to merge, to adjust, to disappear. You might be skilled at reading others and less skilled at reading yourself. This is common. When a child's attention has to be outward to survive, inner awareness can become underdeveloped. You may know what everyone else needs and not know what you need until it becomes unbearable. You may override your own signals, hunger, exhaustion, sadness, anger, because overriding was necessary. You might only notice yourself when the system shuts down. And yet, despite all this, there is something quietly remarkable about the children who grew up too fast. They did not choose to wait, but they learned to carry it. They became attentive, resourceful, perceptive. They learned endurance. They learned responsibility. They learned how to survive in environments that asked too much of them. Those skills are real. They are not fake. They are not meaningless. But they came at a cost that deserves to be named. Because the truth is, a child is not meant to be a caregiver. A child is meant to be cared for. A child is meant to be protected, guided, reassured. A child is meant to have room for mistakes, room for mess, room for fear, room for play. When that room is missing, the child adapts. But the missing room still matters, even if no one meant to take it away. Sometimes people struggle with the idea that their childhood shaped them if there was no obvious villain. They say, my parents tried. They loved me. It was not that bad. And maybe that is true. Maybe there was love. Maybe there was effort. Maybe there were good days. This is not about blaming. It is about reality. A child can be loved and still be overloaded. A child can be safe from harm and still be unsafe emotionally. A child can have food and shelter and still be alone with feelings that are too big for a small body. And when those feelings are carried alone, the body learns its own rules. It might learn to stay calm on the outside and churn on the inside. It might learn to anticipate and appease. It might learn to detach. It might learn to stay busy so it does not have to feel. These are not bad rules, they are old rules. They were created in a time when you had fewer options. There is a particular loneliness that comes from being the strong one early. People assume you will be fine. They come to you for advice. They lean on you. They praise your resilience. And you may even believe it. You may even prefer it. Because being the one who is fine means you do not have to risk being disappointed. Being the one who is fine means you do not have to ask. And asking for many children who grew up too fast became associated with not being met. So you learn to meet yourself, or at least you learn to act like you can. But deep inside, there is often a younger part that still remembers what it was like to be small and responsible. That part may not have words. It may show up as a tight throat when you want to cry but cannot, as anger that arrives late, as anxiety when someone is upset with you, as a hollow feeling after you have helped everyone and there is no one left to help you. This is why recognition matters, not as a self-improvement project, not as a list of things to fix, but as permission to see what happened and what you did to survive it. Recognition is not effort, it is clarity. It is the moment you realize that the shape of your personality has been partly sculpted by adaptation. And when you see that, something softens. Not all at once, not dramatically, just enough to breathe differently. Because the story changes when you stop calling your survival responses flaws. People-pleasing becomes, I learned to sense danger early and prevent it. Hyper-independence becomes, I learned that relying on others was uncertain so I became my own safety. Perfectionism becomes, I learned that mistakes could cost me connection, so I tried to be flawless. Emotional withdrawal becomes, I learned that feelings were not safe to express, so I learned to contain them. And when the story changes, the shame loosens its grip. Shame is often the secret companion of growing up too fast. Shame says you should be grateful. Shame says other people had it worse. But your nervous system does not measure trauma by comparison. It measures it by what was too much. If you carried adult weight in a child's body, that matters. If you learned to earn love through usefulness, that matters. If you were praised for being easy, instead of being held when you were overwhelmed, that matters. And it makes sense that this shaped the way you moved through the world. So if you notice yourself doing these things, managing, anticipating, shrinking, striving, disappearing, it is not because you are broken, it is because you are consistent. Your body is loyal to the strategies that kept you connected to life. There is a kind of tenderness in that loyalty. Even if it hurts now, it was once protective. There is also something else that can be true at the same time. You deserve to be a child. You deserve to be cared for without earning it. You deserve steadiness. You deserved someone who could hold the emotional weight so you did not have to. You deserved space to be messy, to be needy, to be unsure, to be young. If no one ever said that clearly, it might feel strange to hear it, because children who grew up too fast often learn to dismiss their own longing as weakness. But longing is not weakness. Longing is evidence. Evidence that a part of you still knows what you were meant to receive. In the end, the most profound thing to understand about growing up too fast is that it shaped you, but it is not you. It created patterns, but it is not your identity. It trained your nervous system, but it did not write your worth. The person you became is not a mistake. The strategies you carry are not a moral failing. They are signs of intelligence, of adaptation, of a child who found a way. And still, it is okay to name the pain. It is okay to feel the grief for what you did not get. Not as a demand for the past to change, but as a simple honouring of reality. Acknowledging it does not make you ungrateful. It makes you honest. There is a quiet dignity in admitting, I carried too much too soon. There is a quiet relief in realising, that was not normal, even if it was my normal. There is a quiet softness that can begin when you stop forcing yourself to be the strong one every moment, and to allow the truth to exist without argument. You were not born to be useful, you were born to be held. And even if you had to learn strength early, even if you had to become your own anchor, your worth was never dependent on how well you managed. Your worth was never conditional on how little you needed. Growing up too fast may have taught you how to survive. It may have taught you how to carry. It may have taught you how to be the calm in the chaos. But it does not get to be the final definition of who you are. And underneath all the adaptation, underneath the vigilance and the competence, there is still a part of you that was always deserving of gentleness. That part did not disappear, it simply learned to wait.